How is Ben Askren going to do in the UFC? If you'd like to know my opinion, stay tuned and watch this short video. If you want to master MMA fundamentals, check out my instructional called MMA Essential Lessons Part 2. In it you will learn about boxing, Muay Thai, grappling, clinch wrestling, ground and pound, boxing into takedowns, and takedown defense. Check out the link in the description below. Hi, my name is Mark Leichner from MMAcoach.net, where we teach coaches, fighters and enthusiasts how to train smart and not just hard. So Ben Askren is coming to the UFC finally. I say finally because he should have been there a long time ago. For those of you who might not know him, he's an undefeated welterweight fighter. He currently holds a ONE FC belt, middleweight, actually welterweight belt, and he should have been in the UFC a long time ago. He was a Bellator champion in 2010. He left Bellator in 2014. So he's been a top competitor, undefeated MMA fighter, and has a very unique style. He has what I would call 2 out of 3, which means that he has mastered 2 out of 3 MMA segments. He of course has mastered wrestling and ground fighting. His striking, well, I don't know if it's any good. I'm not saying that it isn't, we just haven't seen it yet. He's training with some of the best strikers out there, with Pettis, with Tyron Woodley, and with Duke Rufus, who is considered one of the best striking coaches in the game. So he's exposed to great strikers and spars with great strikers. But his striking is not the game he chooses to play, because he can do much more with his wrestling and with his ground fighting. Does that mean that he doesn't have striking? I don't think so. He probably has some striking at least, but that's something that we don't know because he hasn't shown it yet. It's probably safe to say that he will continue fighting with his usual style, which is taking people down and controlling them on the ground and pounding them out and possibly finishing them either with strikes or with submissions. Now, what's peculiar about Askren is that he has this great style of ground fighting where he draws a lot of techniques from folk style wrestling. And what's even more interesting is that he has both BJJ and folk style wrestling perspectives for ground fighting. And in the beginning of his MMA career, he concentrated more on the BJJ tactics when he ended up on the ground, and later he switched to more of a folk style wrestling ground and pound style, which suited him much better, and this was explained in BJJ Scout's video, and I will link it up down below so you can watch it. That means he's very knowledgeable on the ground, he knows both styles of ground fighting, and that can work to his advantage. All fighters in MMA try to be as well-rounded as possible, and it is a good goal and they should do it. But there are fighters that are just not good in all 3 areas: striking, wrestling, and ground fighting. Or at least they choose not to emphasize all 3. Ben Askren is one of them. Another examples might be Anderson Silva, for example. He's a very good striker and ground fighter, but he wrestles only defensively. There are many other examples, of course, and I think that you should strive to be as well-rounded as possible, but you can get away with 2 out of 3 and be very successful. Finally, he has come to the UFC. I don't think it's official yet. I've seen it on one MMA outlet that they say it's official. They traded him for Mighty Mouse, who went to ONE FC, and it's a very strange decision. Nothing like this has ever been done before, but I'm not going to concentrate on that in this video. I'm going to concentrate on how Ben Askren will do in the UFC and what weight class will he fight in. So the logical thing to consider here is that he will fight in the welterweight division, which is 170, but there are a few problems here. The number one problem is that Tyron Woodley is the champion and they are friends, and Ben Askren is his coach, and they publicly stated that they will not fight each other, which I like, and that will not happen. I know Dana White doesn't like this. I know he doesn't like when friends don't want to fight each other. He thinks it's unprofessional. But in this case, they're not just friends. Askren is his coach, so they're probably not going to fight. And for me, that's kind of a clue that there will be, together with other clues, that there will be a creation of another weight class. Perhaps. I'm not sure. Perhaps. Askren has been calling for 165-pound division to be created so he can fight Khabib for the belt. So that's one option. I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't know if they're going to change all weight classes, which might be interesting if they do it. But for now, let's stick to the possibility of Askren fighting only in 170. So Woodley is out. And Askren will not get the title shot immediately, especially since Woodley is the champion and they don't want to fight each other. He's been calling a lot of fighters out, one of them being Georges St. Pierre. What are the most interesting fights in this division? The most interesting fights is definitely Georges St. Pierre, one of them. And I think he's a very bad matchup for Askren, because maybe he cannot wrestle as well as Askren, but he has great timing on that double leg. I think he has better timing than Ben Askren does. And he has a much better striking. So that fight will probably, he will probably try not to wrestle with Askren, but you know, punch him out. Another interesting fight for me in that division would be against Demian Maia. That's the fight I want to see the most, because you would have a collision of two grappling styles, BJJ grappling style, or BJJ meta, as BJJ Scouts calls it, and folk style meta. And if you want to learn more about these grappling styles, check out my videos where I went into detail of both styles. And I also linked to BJJ Scouts videos there. This fight might not be interesting for a casual MMA fan because there would not be a lot of strikes involved, perhaps from Maia's side, but not so much from Askren's. But in terms of MMA tactics, in terms of ground fighting, in terms of positioning, it would be such an interesting fight to watch and to learn from. And I don't have the slightest idea who would win. Another bad matchup, I think, for Ben Askren would be Colby Covington, because of his endurance and his wrestling, and because he can probably negate Askren's wrestling. Of course, I'm not sure. But his endurance is top-notch, so that would be a tough matchup for Askren. As far as others are concerned, Ben Askren can probably do well against them, but you never know. You never know if he can be knocked out by Darren Till, for example, or some other guy. Who knows? But I'm very excited to see him finally come to the UFC and test his unique style against the top-level competition. Don't forget, Ben Askren has wins over Douglas Lima, who is right now one of the best fighters in Bellator. Also, I think he has a win over Koreshkov, but I'm not sure about this. Of course, Douglas Lima was not the same Douglas Lima as he is now when Askren beat him, but still, it was a great win for him. Another potential matchup is against Khabib. They have very similar styles, and that would be a very nice fight to watch as well. Then we have the weight class issue. Askren did hold a welterweight title in ONE FC, but there is a peculiarity in ONE FC regarding weight classes, and I already discussed that in this video over here, where I describe how ONE FC has the best weight cutting policy of all. They have this test, the dehydration test, where they test fighters. They take out blood samples and they see how dehydrated they are, and if they are dehydrated above a certain level, they don't let them fight. So what ended up happening was that all of the fighters were bumped up one weight class above. So if Ben Askren was a welterweight, he fought in middleweight. I think they called it welterweight, but they fought in 185, so they were not dehydrated. It's much better for the fighters, but that will of course not happen in the UFC, or it won't happen anytime soon. At least I didn't hear anything about it. So Askren will probably fight at 170. Can he make the weight cut? He probably can. He didn't have to do it for quite some time now because he fought in ONE FC, but he will have to make that weight cut. And will he be exhausted? Will he be dehydrated? I don't know. He's been cutting weight for wrestling for a long time, so that will probably not be an issue for him.
Many MMA champions use ground and pound as their go-to strategy. If you want to learn how to do it properly, check out my Total Ground and Pound Blueprint instructional. The link is in the description.
Let me know what you think. How will he do in the UFC? Will he become a champion? Will there be a 165 weight class or will he fight at 170? Let me know in the comments below and let me know who you think will be his toughest fight. If you like this video, like it and share it, and you can also subscribe to my channel. And if you'd like a more in-depth MMA training, check out my instructionals. My name is Mark Leichner from MMAcoach.net, and I will see you again very soon.